Well, hello guys, how are you doing? It's been a while since I uploaded a video like this. I feel like it's been a while. Or maybe it hasn't been so long for you. Anyway, I found this interesting article on Writer's Digest. Yes, I recently made a deep dive. You might see the deep dive up and you can go watch deep dive on Writer's Digest. I don't dislike Writer's Digest. In fact, I've always liked some of their stuff that they put up. Very useful and helpful. Of course, some stuff isn't, you know, I mean, it has its pros and cons, as everything does. So, if you're new here, hi, my name is Enna. I am a self published fantasy author, and I also like to look at writing advice articles, writing related or book related articles, and react to them. In terms of writing advice articles, let's find out what is the best one, what are the best ones, and if we are writers giving writing advice, what can we do better? So, I don't know what this one is going to be like because this is an interview. This is Writer's Digest did an interview with the famous Holly Black. So, I haven't read anything by Holly Black. I wasn't really interested. Isn't it romantasy? I'm not really into that. But interviews are always fun to look into. So we're going to look into the WD Writer's Digest interview Holly Black. The award-winning author discusses the much-anticipated return to fairyland in her newest duology, how she incorporates folklore into her work in a new way, and the joys of co-authoring. So this article was published on June 4, 2023. So it's been a few years. So even though they're talking about her newest duology, this so-called newest duology is about 2 years old. So, written by Moriah Richard. It's 2 names. So, let's see the structure of this interview. Okay, there's a little bit of a Q&A. Okay. There's kind of an introductory thing here, but anyway, have you read any books by Holly Black? And if so, what was your favorite? What did you like about it? What did you not like about it? Let me know in the comments down below. So, let's get into the article. This interview first appeared in the March-April 2023 issue of Writer's Digest. Every author has their unique approach to writing. Whether they start with a theme, character, or plot, the page is where their story blooms to life. As a contemporary fantasy author, Holly Black finds joy in writing the kinds of things she loves to read. As a person who thought of myself as kind of a weirdo growing up, she says, it has been an immense surprise and a great pleasure to find out that the stuff I like is also the stuff other people like. And sometimes the weirder the stuff is that I like, and then I put what the heck does it say? And sometimes the weirder the stuff is that I like, and then I put out there, the more people actually do resonate. Is that a wrong? That is a wrong sentence. What is going on here? And sometimes the weirder the stuff is that I like and then I put out there, the more people actually do resonate with it. I get what she's saying. She's saying, I like weird stuff. The weirder it is, the better. And when I put it out there, other people seem to really like it too. Basically, that's what she's trying to say, but she kind of went about it all kinds of ways of getting there. She isn't wrong. In her career so far, she's published more than 30 fantasy novels for middle grade, young adults, and adults, spent weeks on the New York Times bestseller list with several books, and has been a finalist of an Eisner Award and the Lodestar Award, and the recipient of the Mythopoeic Award. I'm sorry, I'm just completely butchering these names. A Nebula and a Newbery Honor. Among these books are tales of siblings discovering fairies after moving to a decrepit estate. The Spiderwick Chronicles, co-authored with Tony DiTerlizzi. Spiderwick Chronicles. She was one of the ones who wrote the Spiderwick Chronicles. You know, I watched the movie, Tangent Time. I watched the movie The Spiderwick Chronicles, and I liked it. I didn't know that it was a book, though. I didn't know it wasn't a book until many, many years later. And now, finding out for the first time that Holly Black was one of the authors. Interesting. People who can change someone's emotions, memories, and look just by touching them, the Curse Workers trilogy. And a woman working for magicians who manipulate shadows to do their every command, Book of Night. I feel like I've seen that one around Instagram. While some of these books stray into that nebulous area of dark fantasy, there's one thing that ties them all together. The line between horror and fantasy is that sense of awe and wonder. You can write some truly horrific things, but if that sense of awe and wonder is there, to me, it sits in the fantasy space. That's a quote, by the way. Line between horror. This is exemplified. I'm going to get back to what I just read. This is exemplified in her latest release, The Stolen Heir, the first in a duology. It focuses on Surin, called Wren, a fairy living on the outskirts of the human world. When her past comes calling in the form of Oak, reluctant heir to the Elfame throne, a path is laid out before them that will reveal secrets about who they are and change the way Wren sees her role in Fairyland forever. Fairyland has been explored in Black's modern fairy tales trilogy and the Folk of the Air series. This is where we began our conversation. Okay. She said, the quote from Holly Black, "The line between horror and fantasy is that sense of awe and wonder. You can write some truly horrific things, but if that sense of awe and wonder is there, to me, it sits in the fantasy space." You know, I'm pausing because isn't that just dark fantasy? Like dark fairy tales, like dark fantasy? It said here there's one thing that ties them all together. What is that one thing that ties them all together? Are you talking about horrific things like this part that Moriah Richard that Moriah Richard wrote? It's not segueing very nicely into this sentence, but into this quote. But yeah, anyway. One thing that ties them all together. Horrific things are the ones that tie them all together? Or is it the sense of awe and wonder that's tying them all together? Tying what all together? What are we tying together? Well, some of these books stray into that nebulous area. Okay, we're tying all the books she's written together. Maybe it's the sense of awe and wonder. Maybe that's what it is. I do think, you know, when you think about like Brothers Grimm, the original dark fairy tales written by the Grimm brothers, I think maybe the reason we still like them and are fascinated by them today is because it leaves us with a sense of awe and wonder. It's horrific, some of the things, quite horrific sometimes, but we're still left with, ooh, interesting, kind of, you know, and we want to know what happens next. Sort of like, kind of like morbid curiosity, but not that morbid. But I feel like it's a similar, maybe, psychology or something. So anyway, we're going to get into the interview now. Okay. I don't know how I'm going to do this. Some of these questions are short, some of these answers are questions, and then the answers aren't. Hold on. My brain exploded. Some of these questions, some of these answers are long, and some of these answers are short. We'll see how it goes. There was a little bit of time between when you published the trilogy and then the series, then another break before diving into this duology. What is it about this universe that keeps drawing you back in? Answer. I talk about my fascination with fairies as being not unlike Christina Rossetti's Goblin Market view of fairy fruit. What I really love about it is... What? Huh? What? Hold on. Holly Black. Or no, it's not Holly Black's fault for not speaking in coherent sentences. It's the editor of this article's fault for not rewriting her incoherent sentences into coherent sentences that I can read without getting a brain explosion. What is going on here? What I really love about it is here. Listen, this is what it says, okay? If you're not looking at the screen, this is what it says. What I really love about it is here is this world that has such incredible beauty, but it's super dangerous. What I really love about it is here is this world. What is that part? I have no idea what I'm reading. Oh my gosh, it's like, I can't understand it. Okay, hold on. What I really love about it is that this world, that's what it should have been. What I really love about it is that this world here has such incredible beauty, but it's super dangerous. If you want to keep the here in, maybe that's... Anyway, moving on. You absolutely should not be drawn to it in the way you are. It has a kind of ruinous beauty, you know. That is what I really love about it. That tension is built into the way it works. It's not working. Okay. That is what I really love about it. That tension is built into the way it works. Humans are not going to do well there. Laughs. And yet we are drawn to it. It is magic. There was so much brain explosion going on there. I have no idea what I just read. Let me just try to decipher it. Hold on. There's incredible beauty, but it's super dangerous. You shouldn't be drawn to it, but you are. It's ruinous beauty. Ruinous beauty reminds me of, I recently read this book called Follow Me to Ground by Sue Rainsford, and that was like ruinous beauty. It's like, it was very twisted. The main character isn't human, which you get a sense of from the very beginning, but you're not exactly sure what you should be imagining, and then you're like looking through the world through her eyes, and it's all just kind of odd and weird, and everything human is described through her inhuman eyes, and it's like everything is really like, there's moss and there's mud and it's moist and wet and rainy and squishy and musty and earthy. Everything that she sees is like damp and like soil and garden and ground and very odd, and yet somehow you're drawn to that. It's kind of a weird, grotesque beauty, perhaps. Follow Me to Ground by Sue Rainsford, if you like that kind of stuff. And I had another one. Oh, yes. Mexican Gothic is also kind of like that. An old mansion appears in the story. And there's lots of rotting things, like, and there's mushrooms and stuff, but it's kind of pretty too, right? When you think about like a moss covered house or something. So I get this ruinous beauty thing, and that you're drawn to it, but maybe you shouldn't be drawn to it, but you're drawn to it. It's sort of like forbidden, but not, you know. Do you know what I'm saying? Yeah, it says humans are not going to do well there, and yet we are drawn to it. Yeah, so humans are not going to do well in a rotting place, but we are drawn to it. It's kind of like I'm kind of drawn to, not kind of, I'm drawn to bike. Did I say bike? I didn't mean to say bike. I don't ride bikes. Yeah, anyway. Um, what was I even going to say? Oh, yes. I'm drawn to abandoned buildings or abandoned locations. There's some kind of mystery about it. There's a story there that whoever left that place behind is no longer, maybe even no longer able to tell the story. So I wonder, what is the story behind this place? Why has it been abandoned? Um, Sometimes if it's like an abandoned house and you see things that people had left behind, why did they leave them behind? What kind of stories happened here? Just all kind of mysterious, but also pretty. When you see the moss climbing up the houses, and the rust on the windows and the doors and the crumbling ceilings and walls. It's dangerous for humans to go there. Although I'm always tempted to at least get a closer look. I've never gotten a closer look though, because it is dangerous. But you're drawn to it. So I get that. I get that thing that she's saying here. As I was reading The Stolen Heir, this is the interviewer, I kept asking myself, I wonder why she chose Wren's point of view for this first book instead of Oak's. Going from Jude's, his sister's, perspective in the last series, it might have seemed like the easier choice. This isn't a question, it's just a wondering, but anyway. Answer. It's a long answer. Hold on. When I sat down and said, I'm going to do this as a duology, one of the things that I was interested in was, what can I do in a duology that I can't do in a trilogy and I can't do in a standalone? One of the things I've seen people do that I'm fascinated with is breaking the point of views into two books. I have things to say about that. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to say, here's Wren's book and here's Oak's book. It's the same story, but where hers ends, his begins, rather than their narrating a book we already know. He has a lot of secrets in the first book, so it had to be her point of view, and as we go into Wren's book, we learn about her world, we learn about her problems, we learn about her, and we see Oak through her eyes. When we come to his book, we find out what's going to happen to all the people we already know. It's something we're coming to from being away and have had some time to care about him in a new way, and I think it actually would have been harder to go from his point of view, where he knows everybody we know already, to her point of view where she doesn't. Interesting. So I get what she's doing. I get what she's doing here, okay? Let me just say that maybe I haven't read her book, so I don't know. Maybe she did this well. Because I read a duology, which I liked it overall, but the second book, I feel like the character was underdeveloped. So I read this book series, this duology by Mary Lou called Sky Hunter. The first book was Sky Hunter. The second book was Steel Striker. Now, Sky Hunter, main character's name is Talon. Talon, maybe? I don't know. Talon. And she is mute, so she uses signs, and she is a soldier defending her country, and she's very cool. She's called a striker. She's very cool, and I really liked her. She had a very strong character, well thought out character. There was the relationship she has with her friend, she has with her striker partner, she has with her mother, and with other soldiers. Like, there was a lot of story with her. You could tell that, I could tell that there was a lot of backstory with her, and she has a lot of things going on, a lot of nuances or whatever, and all kinds of things going on in her life. And you can see that even though you're not explicitly being told about it all the time. So she was a well-developed character from my point of view, from my perspective, my opinion. And in the first book, she meets this soldier from the enemy country. His name was Red, I think. And he was turned into a human weapon, and I can't remember how exactly it works, but somehow he has to have some bonding with the guy that created him, but that didn't happen yet, and he happens to bond with Talon sort of somehow, kind of by mistake, or I don't really know. So he is he doesn't really, they can't communicate with words because they can't understand each other, but somehow they can communicate inside their heads telepathically. I can't remember exactly how it works, but anyway, what I'm trying to get at is that Red came in as like a complete stranger, and through him we learn about the enemy country. We learn about him a little bit, like his language and his culture, but not much, because a lot of what's going on is, of course, this is Talon's perspective. This is first person Talon's perspective. So we don't get a lot about Red. And so things go down in the first book. It ends at a very exciting cliffhanger. And the second book begins with Red's perspective. He was so not established, but despite that, I feel like he could have been written like Talon, with like hints into sort of like his past, instead of the way that Mary Lou decided to go with this, which was she decided to tell us about it. She decided to tell us about Red through flashbacks and through a subconscious inside his head that keeps recounting to him about his life that he already knows. So while I did like the story overall, because I liked Talon and the relationship she had with her friends and everything like that, and the only thing was that the second book, being in Red's point of view, just wasn't selling it or anything. I mean, there was countless times where strikers are known to be stealthy. And so when they are hidden in the dark, you can't really tell that they're there. And that is cool to know, right? But what if Red keeps telling you that that's what's happening? That, oh, I didn't know that they were in the dark. Like, oh, I didn't know that they were in the dark. Like, constantly. I was like, okay, we get it. We got it. I mean, he can be surprised on his own in other times when we're not seeing him in the story. Anyway, not to really sell those books short, I mean, it's a very cool dystopian, old school dystopian fantasy. I would recommend the Sky Hunter Steel Striker duology to anyone who's just missing some of that old school dystopian fantasy. Think the time when the Hunger Games came out. It's that kind of thing, okay? It's a little bit cheesy, a little bit predictable, but the strikers are really, really cool, okay? So you gotta read them. Anyway, back to this part. So maybe Holly Black did this duology point of view switch. Well, maybe she did. If you've read this duology, because I'm pretty sure that it's out by now, like this duology has been around for a while, let me know your thoughts down below. What did you think about the switching from Wren's point of view to Oak's point of view? Like, do you think it worked, or maybe it didn't work? How didn't it work? What could have been done? Let me know. I'm very curious. And if you're wondering, will I read those books then? If I'm asking you about it, maybe I should just read it myself. I am not interested, so I'm leaving it up to you, the experts, if you've read it. Okay, let me know. Without spoilers, this is the question. Without spoilers, a lot of this novel seems to be about the stories that we tell ourselves about our lives. Was that something that you came into this book knowing you wanted to write about, or did the characters kind of make that choice for you? The stories that we tell ourselves about our lives. Okay. Answer. I think I mostly knew I wanted to write about it. I knew Wren is a very different character than a lot of characters I've written. She is a character who is afraid to want stuff and is honestly in some ways a much kinder character, even though I don't think that's how she sees herself. She is pulled toward doing good and generous acts, and so I wanted to write about her journey. It is a journey in which she is confronted with some choices that we have seen before in The Folk of the Air, but she makes different choices than we have seen characters make before. I was interested in saying, here's a parallel story where somebody has these touchstones. What? You're interested in saying that you're going to say? What is going on here? I was interested in saying, here's a parallel story where somebody has these touchstones that we're going to say, oh wait, here are some places where Jude went this way and this character goes that way, both for good and not, right? Laughs. And I was also interested in having her figure out who Oak was as part of her journey. In terms of the actual quest, part of it is figuring out, well, what are we doing and who is he? Is he on my side? Is anybody on my side? Okay. I could not process what that just said. Am I tired today? I don't know. I worked all day and I'm recording this. Wren is just a kind character, and so what is her journey? A journey where she is confronted with some choices. She makes different choices. She's confronted with choices. Okay. Were they good choices or not? And then figuring out, what are we doing? Who is he? Is he on my side? Is anybody on my side? Interesting. So is it like questioning life choices? Is that what this is about? I don't really know. I don't really get it. Questioning life choices. Did I make the right choice? I mean, that is something that can be very relatable to many people. And I'm pretty sure if I think hard enough about it, maybe some of my books actually talk about life choices and what is the right thing to do. I think at least 2 of them do that, out of all the books that I've written. Although the book that I recently self-published, Between Roses, which is, if you like anything Alice in Wonderland, it's the book for you. There are some choices that Erin questions. She questions some choices that she makes. She's begins as like a follower type of character. She has this friend, this really pushy friend, and Erin kind of wants to be like her. She thinks that's what her life is about, but and then when she gets lost in a crazy world, she doesn't really know what to do at first, and she's trying to rely on lots of people, but they don't all have time for her, and so then she has to make her own choices, but she doesn't know if they're the right choices and will they help her, or what is the right thing to do in terms of the right thing to do, not just for her but for those around her, and does she care about those around her? Like, what is her stance? So she does go through a little bit of that kind of questioning. So I guess it does happen in Between Roses. So what happens at the end with Erin? I think you're going to have to read to find out. It's on Amazon, Between Roses. Look it up. Shameless plug. But I have to, I want to tell you. I want you to experience Between Roses. It's crazy. It's wild. It's adventure and action and mystery and magic and forest, and there's a little boy that is half hare, hare as in the rabbit type of hare. He's like the human version of the March hare. He's very cute. His name is Duxum. You should meet him. You would like him very much. He's very cute. He's a hare boy. Oh boy. Oh boy. Okay. I don't really know what Holly Black was saying here. Oh wait, here are some places we're also interested in having her figure out who Oak was as part of her journey. Is something up here? I think so. Something else that I noted between this book and the Folk of the Air series is that several of the characters are children of two worlds, fairyland and the human world. Because of this, it seems like the characters have to eventually decide where they belong. Is this parallel between the series and duology something that you decided to explore before you sat down to write? Answer. I think that's a thematic piece that I found myself writing about a lot through the course of my career. Like, it's something I think I come back to again and again. The idea of being caught between two worlds and being caught between two senses of self and have to figure out how to integrate them. I think that most stories start out with the idea of a binary choice, right? You can be this or you can be that. And each character has to figure out how not to make that choice. How to figure out how to make those two things match. How to have both. I see. Interesting. I immediately started thinking about the current story that I'm editing. It's in the same world as Between Roses. So Between Roses starts in the fictional state of New Soleil, which is somewhere in America, around California. And this next book that I'm editing with the tentative title of Girl Becomes Rat. That's not the real title. I have a real title picked out, but I'm not going to tell you yet. That one is about two worlds. Two worlds, one family. Trust your heart. Let fate decide to guide these lives we see. I love that song. So, that was a song break. So, yes. So, the current story I'm editing is about a girl in the human world. Of course, she is a human. But no, she actually isn't. She finds out that she's not human. She is a rat. That's why it's called Girl Becomes Rat, because she starts becoming a rat after she finds a bracelet. So I'm working on that. And eventually she will have to make a choice. Just like other things in life where you need to make a choice. I was going to say something completely different there, but I decided not to tell you because it might spoil Between Roses, and I don't want to spoil that book for you if you're going to go and read it. So anyway, but the thing in my books, different from Holly Black's books, is that maybe different. Oh my gosh, I feel so hungry right now. I hope you can't hear my stomach grumbling. Each character has to figure out how not to make the choice of this or that. That is what Holly Black is saying. But in my case, the characters have to choose. And if they can't choose, sometimes they are forced to choose. So that's a little bit of a difference. But that's not the point in the Girl Becomes Rat story. That's not the point in the Girl Becomes Rat story. The point of the Girl Becomes Rat story is about your identity. Who are you? What do you want to do in life? That's what that story is about. The first book, it's not really a duology or a sequel or anything, but the first book, Between Roses, that's more about who are you without your pushy friend? Who are you deep down inside? Who have you been hiding all these years? Pushing down into the depths of existence. Who are you really, Aaron? That's what that book's about. You know that song that Avril Lavigne, I don't even know how to say her last name. Avril sings. Wonderland. I think that was in the Alice in Wonderland Tim Burton film, right? The theme song. She says, I found myself in Wonderland. So that is exactly where Erin finds herself in Underland. So, what is Underland? Let's find out. Between Roses on Amazon. Boop, 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 boop. Question that's not a question. It seems like it's also very apt thematically to have this be written for a young adult audience. I tend to view that age as developing this new sense of self outside of what your role has been in your family or what you've been like at school. And you're experimenting and figuring out, this is who I want to be and these are the things I'm drawn to. That was not a question. Nonetheless, answer. Well, I do think so much of that age is about seeing, who am I? Who am I going to be? Oh my gosh, that's just what I was just talking about. How much am I going to follow the expectations of either my family or my peers or like myself? How much am I going to, or like myself? What? How much am I going to follow the expectations of either my family or my peers or like myself or like myself? I don't know. I don't know if this is liking myself, like loving yourself, that kind of thing, or is this just the slang like? I can't tell. How much am I going to follow my own idea of who I was and the stories I have told myself about myself? Can I tell myself a new story? And if I tell myself a new story, is that wonderful and freeing, or is it absolutely panic-inducing? Because if I no longer have anything to stand on, will I be swept away? There's so much of that identity that I think we associate so strongly with the teenage experience because it is a moment when you really have such a room to make such big choices. But it's also something that we do throughout our lives. And I think that's why, like, these stories have such power, like we are often reinventing ourselves. Oh my gosh, Moriah Richard, you're supposed to edit out these things like the like and those sort of little things when you write the answer of an interview into an article. Oh my gosh, it's so hard to read. Please stop. Unless we're analyzing like these like uses like this and like the like of the like. Okay. So it was just what I was talking about. It was just what I was talking about. I was just talking about this. Oh my gosh. Okay. So is this different though from doubting your identity? Identity crisis, is it different? Or is it like the same? Is she talking about the same thing? Like, who am I? Who am I going to be? Is that more like worrying about the future? Or is it more like not sure about your present self? Because I can't really tell which it is. But I do get this part. There's so much of that identity that I think we associate so strongly with the teenage experience. Most of my characters are teenagers or adults having a crisis with their self. Because that's really relatable. And as someone writing it, it helps me to explore ideas and thoughts and stuff like that. And I think it's one of the most relatable experiences. Someone in their life, at some point in their life, someone at some point in their life, anyone probably listening to this or not listening to this, please listen. Just kidding. Please listen. Please subscribe. Anyone would have this experience at some point. Like, who am I? What am I doing? Like, what am I doing? What am I doing with my life? Like, what's going on? Like, there are very few people, I think, who are very, very sure of what they want to do. They would question themselves. People will question. We question ourselves. We're very hard on ourselves. So we question ourselves. Like, are you making the right choices? Are you who you want to be? Is this the job you want to do for the rest of your life? You know, we're asking ourselves. Oh, because we are so unsatisfied with ourselves, aren't we? So it's a relatable thing to explore. And from a teenager is probably like when you... I'm starting to realize that I say like a lot. Point it out and you notice it. It's just like when you see faces in things. You can't stop seeing them. Faces and things. Do you see a face in your room that isn't a face, but could be a face? So anyway, I was just saying that I think it's really relatable stuff. And it's good as a writer, I think, to write relatable stuff. Because but the thing is, what is relatable stuff, right? I think, this is what I think. If you relate to it as good possibility, very good possibility that somebody else relates to it as well. There is this author on Instagram that I've been following for a while. Amber, I don't know how to say her last name. Her name is Amber. And she has traditionally published and she's also self-published. She's a very, very prolific writer. And I really do look up to her. And this was something that she said about the relatable thing. This was something that she said. And it stuck with me because it's so true. If you relate to it, if you relate to your character, there's bound to be, she didn't say it like this, but there's bound to be someone else out there who also relates to it. Or if you like the story, surely there's someone else out there that likes it as well. I mean, it makes sense. If you relate to something, you're not the only one in the entire universe who relates to that thing. There are probably at least 100 other people who relate to that thing that you relate to. So that means that if you write a story with a character or with a situation that is relatable in some way to you, there's a big possibility that there are other people who are going to relate to it, and so they will read your book. So in the end, what the point of her post was that you don't have to worry about, oh, are people going to relate to my book? Are people going to like my book? I don't really know. There are going to be people. There are going to be people. There are people in the world that relate to what you relate to. Pretty sure there are a whole bunch of them in your country or in whatever language you're writing in. So you don't have to worry. So writing a book, so Holly Black writing this book about the teenage experience and teenagers wondering, who am I? Well, who am I going to be? Do I know myself? What is my story? It's very relatable. And so that was good. That was great. That was nice. I don't know how to wrap this up. It was nice. It's good. It's good that she did that, and it worked. I guess a lot of people liked it, right? Did you like it? Question. That's very true. And this book in particular, I thought had an incredible emotional arc. I think that as writers, we often talk about how to construct a plot arc. But would you mind speaking a little bit about your strategy to writing an emotional arc like Wren's? Interesting question. Interesting question. I thought she might go into speak a little bit about your strategy in writing a story, but emotional arc. Okay, that's interesting. I wonder what Holly Black is going to say. Let's find out together. Okay. Answer. Especially when you're writing fantasy and you're thinking about magic and you're thinking about how you want to construct the world, well, all books are essentially torture devices, right? Laughs. A protagonist, they have a terrible fear. They're going to be facing it. Terrible secret? It's coming out. Anything that they wish would never happen will happen during the course of this book. Magic has to be thematically related to the struggles of the character and to the stuff that the character is facing. So, there are certain things that happen in this book that are really about what am I, who am I, what is our self, what is our sense of self based on, and also about what it means to trust people. One thing you do is you have to think about is how, why are we adding an is? We don't need another is in there. Moriah Richard, we don't need another about. One thing you do is you have to think about, how do I use the story? The time limiting thing that we see, is she inserting this? I don't know. Is Holly Black inserting this? I don't know what's going on. The time limiting thing that we see as the beginning to the end to push out of these characters the stuff that they don't necessarily want to deal with. What? The time limiting thing that we see as the beginning to the end to push out of these characters the stuff that they don't necessarily want to deal with, the stuff they are going to emotionally have to deal with. I don't know what that sentence was, but that was a weird sentence. How can these things rub up against each other in such a way that they can push the characters to face the things they don't want to face? Oh, that's it. Okay. What? The emotional arc. What is the strategy to writing an emotional arc? What does she say? For some reason, she's talking about magic relating to the struggles. The stuff that they're going to emotionally have to deal with. How can these things rub up against each other in such a way that they can push the characters to face the things they don't want to face? Can I say this? I'm going to say it. I'm going to say that this answer and this question do not match. No, it sounds like Moriah Richard Ask a question about magic. But then in writing this article, she changed the question. So now it sounds like Holly Black is talking about something completely different out of left field. That's what it seems like. She is talking about some emotional things, but not a lot. The strategy writing an emotional arc like Wren's, but we're not getting the strategy. What strategy? There is no strategy here. What is strategy to write emotional? What? What are we? Do you understand what is talked about here? Strategy. What is her strategy? There's nothing about I did this, I did that. There's nothing about that. So this question and this answer don't match. It's water and oil. Oh no. Writer's Digest. Please. I know you can do better. You were fine so far. Just I was just looking at this cover and thinking, this is a Wren, right? I mean, because her name is Wren, right? Isn't that what it is? And then we have this pointy thing. This title is hard to make out of the cover, though. Why this white background, though? Question. I know a lot of genre writers in academic settings hear the question, are these fantastical elements necessary to tell the story? You do hear those questions? I've never gotten those questions. I'm a genre writers in academic settings. Well, I've never been a genre writer in an academic setting. Maybe that's why I've never gotten this question. As someone who has written a lot of genre fiction for middle grade, young adults, and adults, would you mind sharing your thoughts on this approach to writing genre fiction? Fantastical elements in the story. She's going to answer that. Something about that. Okay. I keep clicking the mouse on the side that I should be clicking the mouse. Oh my gosh. Answer. Well, I think that magic is always a metaphor, right? But I think to write fantasy, it has to also be magic. I think the ways it is understood as metaphor are important. Magic is always saying something that's allowing you to look at something slanted. So, for instance, if you want to write about anger, we have all kinds of realistic narratives about anger, but we also have certain expectations of realistic narratives. About anger. But now you're writing about a werewolf and you cannot just say, I think you should really just calm down. Like, you have to approach anger differently. Okay. However, I think it's a huge mistake to think of anger in that context as only metaphor, because also this is a werewolf and you must be telling the story of a werewolf that you truly believe in and that you're invested in. To me, that is the stuff that fantasy can do. I can talk about stuff in a way that isn't just slanted, but it's also slanted, right? It allows us to see the world differently. Okay. I feel like you said a lot of stuff and not a lot of stuff. Okay, because you said it's slanted, but it's not slanted. This answer is slanted and not slanted, maybe. I don't know. I feel like I know what she's saying. So this is what I think that she's saying. You can tell me if I'm right or wrong. She gives the werewolf example, and she says you can't just say you should really calm down. You have to approach anger differently. because a werewolf being angry might look different to a human being angry. And the emotional roller coaster or whatever, how the emotions affect the werewolf physically might be different than how the emotions affect the human. And so when you write a werewolf versus writing a human being angry, you will be telling the story in a different way, because you want people to believe that this werewolf is really, truly angry. However, you are not writing anger in a really different way, but it's adjusted towards this werewolf. 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 What wolf? Who wolf? Who wolf? Werewolf. Werewolf? I don't know. I don't know where he is. Anyway. So that's what I think that she's saying. It's based on perspective, or how the character sees the world, how a character experiences the outside world. What is it like for a werewolf to be angry versus a human to be angry? How are these emotions experienced? You have to write them in a way that is believable, despite the fact that a werewolf is not real. But you have to make them feel real. Like, oh yeah, it makes sense for this werewolf to be angry in this way because he's a werewolf, and this is how werewolves get angry, and it makes sense in this world. Am I making sense? I hope I'm making sense. I don't know what this stuff about magic is up here. I think to write fantasy has to also be magic. Depends on how you define magic. I think things can be magical, but not have like magic powers. Things can be glowy, but not be really like magical. You know what I mean? Like sparkles and fire coming out of a human being's palm, or like you point your finger and lightning comes out of it. You know, that's magic. Or it could just be static electricity. Or you could say magic, and you might mean different kinds of magic. Real magic and fake magic. Like the trick kind of magic. But sometimes some magicians, I cannot figure out how they did it. Even if I've seen video clips of magicians like showing what they're doing, the sleight of hand stuff. Even after seeing it in slow motion, when I see them doing it at a regular speed, I know what they're doing, but I can't see it at all, and it almost does look like magic. It's really good. Some people, they really just, wow. Okay, I think we're almost to the end. Are we, or are we not? Yeah, kind of. Okay. Question. We've already touched on this a little bit, but when it comes to writing about fairies, specifically thinking about this idea of metaphor and not metaphor, there are always tropes that readers expect about fairies, like that they can't lie, they love riddles and wordplay, etc. etc. When you were structuring your world, how did you determine what rules you want to incorporate? Okay, cool. We're getting into some world building stuff. I like world building stuff. Answer. You can look at English folklore, Celtic folklore. There's fairies in many different cultures, so you have this wealth of material. Whenever you are pulling from folklore, it's different than creating a magic system from the ground up. What you get is resonant, right? We all know a little bit of it. The familiarity that readers have with vampire fiction means the writer doesn't need to tell people about the world. But the more you move away from our expectations, or the more you come up with something that is unique, there's a certain difficulty of buy-in for the reader. The further you go away from the expectations, you get something that's really fun and different, but also you get a harder beginning. When I was writing about fairies, I was writing the stuff that really resonated me. The stuff, it just says resonated me. I was writing the stuff that really resonated me, the stuff that felt true about fairies. I think whenever you're writing in a tradition, and in this case in a tradition of people who have written urban fantasy with fairies, you are adding to a conversation that's come before you. I think it's really important to know what that conversation is, and then it's important for you to say, okay, what am I adding? What is it about the way I look at it that's different? Huh. Okay. I see. So she took something that exists and build upon that, or use it as inspiration. That's fine. I don't have anything against it or whatever. I mean, that's fine. That's fine. I just don't do it. For me, I do take inspiration from things, but I take such a little bit of it and mix it all together with other things that you won't be able to tell where I got inspiration from. Like, very rarely you can tell where I actually got the inspiration from. So I like making up things, making up entire bits of lore and world and stuff. So my stories are all, the only one that I really took a lot of heavy inspiration is Between Roses, where I took a lot of inspiration from the original two Alice books by Lewis Carroll, but I didn't take like a lot of it because in Between Roses there is no Alice. Well, there is sort of, but there's no Alice like in the originals. So I did take inspiration, but I didn't really take inspiration. You know what I mean? It's just bits and pieces here and there. I took some familiarities, but a lot of it is the original world. That's how I do it. But she seems to like to take from folklore and stuff like that. Fairies and folklore. Celtic folk. Blah, 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 blah. Celtic folklore. Okay. She's thinking about, well, okay, what am I adding? What is it about the way I look at it that's different? You know what? If you look at it from your perspective, it's already different. You don't have to try to come up with something that's actually adding to the literature like you're doing some kind of academic writing or something like that. Something new and interesting is nice, but sometimes people just like the old school stuff too. So if you're really, really struggling to come up with something original, just remember that your imagination, your perspective is original. It's yours. And if you are looking at something through your perspective, that is already original. So don't worry about it. Don't worry about trying to be original. You are unique and original. That's awesome, isn't it? Just write from your perspective and you got something unique and original. Isn't that cool? That's awesome. Great. Possum. This is what Holly Black looks like. I never knew this is what she looks like. Is her hair blue or does it just look blue? I'm not sure. Question. It is very interesting, especially when you said about writing what you are really drawn to. To me, it's just very interesting. Okay. To me, part of the fun of world building is making the imagination tangible for readers. Taking something that you really love and is real to you and making it real to somebody else so they can love it. So, other than your character, is there anything in particular that you really love bringing to life on the page? Interesting question. I thought we were going to get more into world building, but I guess not. Okay. Answer. One thing I learned about writing fantasy is that you are describing a lot of stuff. Laughs. You really have to make this world feel lived in. I remember years ago doing a reading and it was all realistic fiction writers and me. And the thing I realized is I have to describe things so much more because I have to describe the real world with the same level of weight as the fantasy world, or the fantasy world winds up feeling not real anymore. I have to describe a locker with the same level of intensity that I'm going to describe a tree person, right? Laughs. Because otherwise the weight's all wrong. I realize just how much it's about setting these scenes and really having them feel lived in and real, so that you could imagine out of the corner of your eye, really, so that you could imagine out of the corner of your eye, really seeing magic. That was not a very good sentence. And it's not Holly Black's fault at all. I'm guessing either she got these questions in her email box and answered them, or it was a phone call, or it was like a Zoom call or something. I think it was probably, since it says laughs, she's not going to write that down. It was probably like a face-to-face conversation. So it was transcribed, and Moriah Richard decides to not do a lot of editing with it. You're supposed to make it readable. If this was, I'm watching her in a video or something, it's okay because she's just speaking, but I'm reading it, it needs to be coherent. Yeah, so. Oh, Writer's Digest. You have your good points and your bad points, but I like you anyway. One thing I learned about Wren's fantasy, that you were describing a lot of stuff. I wonder if she finds description difficult, because I feel like it's something that she loves doing, but I'm wondering if she struggles with it or something, because she goes into a lot of detail about description. I don't really struggle a lot with description. I don't know if it's because I'm just an observant person. I don't find it a chore to describe. I like describing things, especially something that's in a forest. Especially nature. I really like describing nature. And like old dilapidated buildings and things like that. The only thing that I'm not good at is like making character voices distinct enough that if they are all in a room and you don't have the dialogue tags, that you can tell them apart. I don't know where I'm going with this thought. It's like I've passed the point of feeling hungry, and now I'm just kind of hollow inside. So she likes description, but I'm wondering if she struggles with it. I would want to know what are her like go-to techniques when she's struggling to describe something. Like, what does she do? Like, what are her techniques that she uses? I'd be interested in learning about that. Writer's Digest. If you ever have a second interview with her, that might be fun to ask some more technical things. That's kind of what I want to hear. This is a writing advice website from a writing related magazine from the 1920s. Maybe you talk about some technical stuff. Maybe that would be fun. Just a thought. Okay, maybe I should rapid fire some of these. Question 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 questions left. Rapid fire question. A lot of your books set in fairyland start with a map to orient the reader in the world. Do you create those maps, or was that something that your publisher wanted to include? I wanted to do a map. Answer: I wanted to do a map, but I also wanted to do a map that felt like fairy, in the sense that this is not a map that you yourself could calculate distance on. I think that that was important to me with the Isles. I wanted it to feel like a fairy story and a fairy tale rather than a high fantasy. Okay. I don't know what this map looks like, so I can't say anything. You know, I wanted to put a map in the paperback version of Between Roses, but it was just taking me way too long to figure out how to show a world that is split into 3 layers. How to even tell someone who makes maps to draw that for me. I should be able to draw it myself first before I ask someone else to do it. And I was just, there was so much else going on. I couldn't do it for the paperback version. But I'm hoping that maybe I could do it in some other capacity. So I'm working on the map. I know people like maps. I like maps too. They do help sometimes. But anyway. Next question. Question 1 and 2 are going to be in the same question. Not 1 and 2, but the next questions, the next 5 questions, the first 2 questions are going to be in the same section. So the first one was about maps. The second one, question. I mentioned it before, but you have written middle grade, young adult, and adult fiction. To do all 3, I think, is really exciting and quite a feat. Is there a different way that you approach your storytelling when you know the age of the audience is different? Oh, that is an interesting question. I once tried to write a middle grade story, but I kept slipping into young adult fiction, so I don't know how to make it middle grade. Answer. I tried to remember what it was like to be those different ages and what my concerns were. For middle grade, there's a lot in the smaller domestic sphere. Your friends, your family, but the world seems like a place for exploring. Everything feels more significant in the local landscape. Whereas when I think about being a teenager, you're having adventures, right? You're meeting people and you are becoming yourself, and you are trying to figure out how to do that. It feels really impossible in a lot of ways. The stakes feel really, really high because you're doing everything for the first time. Whereas when I was writing Book of Night, here's somebody who screwed up, right? Who went out there and just screwed up. And I think that is very much how I felt. Laughs. Certainly not to the extent that Charlie did, but I think there is a sense that the possible moves feel smaller. You feel much more stuck in place. There's a great fear of being stuck in place and about what that means and how many moves you have left. Okay, interesting. Okay. I suddenly started thinking about a chessboard. I don't know why. Trying to remember, when she said, I tried to remember what it was like to be those different ages and what my concerns were. That is exactly where my mind goes when I'm writing Erin, or the current character. Her name is Bethany. Erin is 17, well, at the time of her story. Bethany is 17 going on 18, like her 18th birthday is like a few days away. And so I'm remembering like what it was like to be 17 going on 18, knowing that I'm going to be an adult soon, and figuring that out, what I was feeling and things that I was concerned about and things that I remember talking to my friends about and what we were concerned about. So yeah, it's good to remember what you were like at that age. So that means maybe when I write a middle grade story, I should try to remember what it was like to be a kid. I was a really quiet kid, though. I was really quiet and shy and wouldn't really talk to people very much. But I wanted to be involved. And I was just, both my parents were working and they were really busy, and I'm an only child, so I had to like entertain myself. Maybe I should write a fantasy story where there is an only child who goes off to Adventureland by herself, but I feel like there are a lot of those. I like reading stories, middle grade stories, where it's about siblings and friendships. It's very nice. So if I want to write, when I think about wanting to write a middle grade story, I want to write about something that I enjoy reading, which is about siblings and friendships. I didn't have a lot of that growing up. So if I try to think about what it was like to be at that age, it doesn't really work for me. But anyway, maybe I should just try, huh? Haven't even tried. What are you saying? Question. So we talked about maps, we talked about writing different ages, and we're talking about this. Next, your book feels very relatable. I do wonder if that approach plays a big role in that you're coming to it from your own emotional space and setting up your characters that way, which is a really beautiful way to think about your connection with your characters. Answer. It's a terrible way to plot, though, laughs. That's how I plot. I'm feeling a feeling, and I'd really like to write a book about this feeling. That is interesting and funny in a writerly way. I'm wondering where she gets her inspiration from. Like, where does her inspiration come from Celtic folklore, or does it come from just feeling the feeling? How does it start for her? What is her process? I really want to know what that is, but I'm not sure if they're going to ask that. So that is 3 questions. We talked about maps, writing different ages, and being relatable. Question. You've co-authored several books. Does that play a role in how you plot together, coming from an emotional space? Is that something that a co-author can help you structure, or do you find it more challenging to work with someone? Answer. I think every time that you collaborate, it's a new experience, and you collaborate differently with each person. Oh, I know that feeling. I tried collaborating with people on an academic paper, and oh boy, stressful. In different ways. Never want to do it again. That was a side note. Okay, getting back into it. I think every time that you collaborate, it's a new experience, and you collaborate differently with each person. That is the excitement of it too. I definitely have never stuck to an outline. Oh, interesting. You can see behind me over here. Oh, they must be video calling each other. You can see behind me over here, I put these outlining things up on the wall like I knew what I was doing. I love it. I'm just really bad at it. So I feel like I'm somebody who has to write it wrong before I write it right. One of the exciting things about co-authoring is, for instance, writing the Magisterium series with Cassandra Clare. She does extensive outlines and then she sticks to it for the most part. Interesting. And when I was working with her, she was much more like, okay, we're going to work this out and then we're going to do this. And I was like, okay, that seems exciting. This is fresh and new. And there are parts where she is going to deviate and where I was there being like, hello, what if we just do this? But you know, I think the fun of collaboration is the fun of being able to do something you would not otherwise do. Interesting. So she's more of, I don't know if she's a pantser, but she seems more all over the place kind of writer. I'm a pantser, by the way, right by the seat of my pants. I don't outline anything. I only have a vague beginning, middle, and end picked out in my mind. I kind of write towards the end. That's how I write. So it seems like she could be a pantser or some form of pantsing. Maybe a planter, because she does seem to outline a little bit. She worked with someone who is very structured. Cassandra Clare does extensive outlines. I see she is a plotter. So a plotter and a planter work together. I don't know how it would be if someone like me, a pantser, would work with a plotter. I don't know if I'd be able to take it. That seems too rigid to me, but maybe it works. I don't know. And so we talked about, my voice was in the middle of a yawn. I shouldn't say yawn, I'm going to yawn again. So we talked about co-authoring. And now we're going to talk about advice for readers. Question: do you have any words of advice for our readers? I think when I started writing, I liked reading about writing, and I had a lot of rules that I thought I had to follow. Show, don't tell is an excellent rule that is also a terrible rule, you know? I started thinking about what I like in a story. Think about your own reader pleasure rather than the things you either think you should as a writer or that you think that, wait, think about your own reader pleasure rather than the things you either think you should do as a writer or that you think makes you look clever. If you write what you love to read, the rest will fall into place. That's good that she says show don't tell is a excellent and also terrible rule, because it is. Maybe I'll get into that in another video. Thinking about pleasing the reader rather than the things that you want to write, that could send you off to writer's block. Procrastination. I am not speaking anymore. Procrastination station 2 is what I wanted to say. If you write what you love to read, the rest will fall in place. Also, I want to add, if you write what you love to write about, people reading it will enjoy it. It really seeps through. I could tell. See, I talked about the Sky Hunter and Steel Striker duology, right? I said that it wasn't so good. The second book wasn't so good. But I had fun. I had a fun time because I could tell that Mary Lou also had a fun time. And I think it was in the acknowledgments, that she just wanted to write a dystopian fantasy, so she wrote one. And I thought, well, it shows she had fun. I could tell, like, it really shows through. I don't really know how to explain it, but I'm pretty sure that if you've read a book and it just looks like the author just had a really fun time writing it, you enjoy it too, even if it's kind of mediocre. So write what you love, write what is fun for you, and enjoy the experience and experiment and just have just so much fun with it. Because it shows. And if you have fun with it, that's great. You had fun with it. Oh my gosh, that is so awesome for you. And then the readers reading it, oh my gosh, they will have so much fun with it too. And isn't that great? Win-win for everyone. So we talked about co-authoring, and then we talked about advice for readers, and we talked about within that show don't tell being a terrible and excellent rule, and also write what you love writing, enjoy yourself. So that is the end of this article. What did you think about this article? Did you enjoy it? Did you have a great time? I had some questions for you. I can't remember them all right now because my brain is exploding. Answer all the questions. Tell me your thoughts down below in the comments, and I will reply to them. I always reply to comments. And yeah, that was interesting, reading about an author that I've never read, but also finding points that I relate to or I understand. It's very interesting. Very good. Some parts of the article, which is kind of, I don't know what's going on here, but you know, it's Writer's Digest. We're not looking for perfection here, unfortunately. But I like Writer's Digest. Anyway, so that is the end of this video. Please subscribe if you want more. I am currently in the middle of researching for my next big deep dive. It's going to be on Penguin Random House, the big publishing house. Yes, because I am very curious about how they came to be, and it seems to be interestingly complicated. So stay tuned for that. I don't know when it's coming, but I'm working on it. So anyway, hope you have a lovely rest of the day, and you will hear me in the next video. My brain exploded. Please keep hydrated. The fox is out.